Don't forget to watch parts 1 and 2. And in part 2, we left off completing the box and putting all the fiberglass around it. And today we're going to pick up and start to do fairing as well as applying gel coat.
It's in the dispenser part. I think we're getting to what we want here. Here's what I'm kind of doing on this. It'll be a little easier to see from this side. So basically just glopping this on a little bit, and then I'm coming in and I'm pressing it down into all the valleys and the lows, and I'll come back and I'll clean it up here in a minute. Again, this first section is really just to get it pressed into these edges. You can see why that peanut butter consistency is so important. We need this stuff to stand on its own and hang there and not just run off of this, which it would if we didn't add enough thickener here to get it to do that.
Now it's just a matter of repeating this around all the sides. I'm filling in the small gaps where the plywood came together and where the tops are uneven. And in a second, I'll fair the rest of the surface.
Now, not having done this before, I'm kind of assuming it's a little bit like doing drywall. So that's the reason why I caked it on there.
So this is a good lesson. This was the first side I did, and I'm talking about caking some on here in just a second. It's way too much. As a matter of fact, what I've learned, and you'll see here in just a moment, and you saw that lizard run by, caught my attention. I didn't know what it was. But this definitely was too thick, and what I found was I can probably use about as much as I have on this one side to do the rest of the entire box. So on the next sides I'll show you the right way to do it, and I'll fast forward a little bit here and just go to the last edge where I got better with each side I went ahead and faired on. I can't believe I'm putting more on this side.
All right, so we have the box faired in, and I think I'm gonna let this dry, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna do a gel coat over it. What I'm not sure is if I should sand it first. I think I'm not gonna. I think I'm just gonna put the gel coat over it. You talk about sweating though, look at that. My hands are just sopping wet in there. It's a hot day already. I gotta tell you, that looks disgusting, and that's my sweat, crying out loud. It's gonna feel like I'm stepping into the air conditioning when I get this thick coat off. Look at that. But herein lies one of the downsides of fiberglass work. It has to be fairly warm, and I've tried it in 70-degree weather and I've not had it work. Now maybe I had a bad batch, maybe it was a little cooler than it needed to be, maybe I didn't mix it right, but 3 tests in a row, if you go back and look at our polyester resin test, didn't work, and I waited a month till it warmed up a little bit more outside, and it did a lot better. So I'll suffer through it as much as I need to, but the idea here is got to be warm to make this stuff set up. Gives you less working time, but it cures. I get to reward myself with my coffee. I need to come back here with a trash bag. I've got a bunch of these little grocery bags I keep filling up with gloves and whatnot. They're overflowing, so I need to bring a bag back here, throw it away. All right, I will see you back here in a little bit when this dries and we give it a light sand just to get the big bumps off, and we've run that gel coat on.
Open up the door, let's take a look. All right, there it is, faired out. Let me bring it out in the light and we'll take a closer look. How's it look, McKinley? It's good? All right. The box, went ahead and faired it yesterday. It's interesting, there's a couple little spots in the fairing that still seem, a little bit uncured. I don't know if that's just the tackiness of the fact that it's with mixed with laminating material or what. But I think this looks nice, and we'll go ahead and get a finish on this. You know, inside of the box, it's not finished as nicely, but frankly, I'm okay with that. The inside's, well, it's the inside of a box.
have life jackets or fire extinguishers or whatever else I'm going to throw in there.
I'm now getting ready to mix up my gel coat. I just bought a quart of this, and I'm going to mix up a fairly small amount here. It's important to note that you've heard me talk a couple of different times through this video about me using what I've referred to as a laminating resin. That's a polyester resin with no wax in it, and it remains a little tacky so that each layer, successive layer, sits on top of it and adheres really well to the previous one. If I were not doing gel coat and I was just doing a final coat of polyester resin, I would want to add wax to it to give it this final coat. In my case, I'm using gel coat, and a gel coat is like a polyester resin with a pigment in it, and it also has the wax. The purpose behind the wax is it causes a skin to form over the top of the material, and it allows it to completely cure underneath that, free of the oxygen. So that's what the wax does in these resins. So the manufacturer of this one actually recommends that on the first coat you thin it a little bit. They recommend 15 to 20%. I have 8 ounces here. I want to go less than that, so I'm only putting in here about a half an ounce or so. And it's important that once you add your thinner, and in this case it recommends thinning with acetone, so that's what I actually use. You want to mix this really well, so I'm using one of these craft sticks and mixing it very thoroughly. And again, just like the polyester resin, you have to add your MEKP, your catalyst, and again, it's really important that you get it thoroughly mixed. If at any point you've done a project and you kind of finished up your layup and you left your little cup sitting on the counter and you come back the next day and some of it's hard and crispy and some of it still remains a little bit tacky, that's because you didn't thoroughly mix the MEKP into all sections. So anytime you're mixing gel coat or even the resins themselves, you want to run this little popsicle stick all the way down along the bottom of that can really, really well. It's important to get it thoroughly mixed. I've got my little helper here. I've told her 100 times to please step back. I get worried about using chemicals by her, but this time she just wouldn't quite step backwards here. Forgive the voiceovers. I recognize that the battery on my microphone died while I was doing this. So once it's thoroughly mixed, a good full minute or so, it's really important to mix this well. I'm just going to go ahead and apply this with a small roller. So I bought a 4-inch paint roller, and it's important to use the foam rollers. You don't want to use those heavy nap ones like you would use on a latex-based paint in your home. So I'm just pouring my gel coat down into one of these little disposable trays, and just like you would with a paint roller, you want to get all sides of the roller completely saturated with the gel coat. And it's okay to roll this on a little thicker than you would, for example, if you were painting something in your home. This really is okay to get on there thicker and then ultimately just spread it around with the roller. And you notice I'm a smart guy here. I'm starting on the inside of the box, so I do my bad work first and then I get a little better as I go along. I'll show you the outside now. So now we move on to the outside, and again, it's just a matter of doing this like you would a house roller. I'm going to let everyone know, I use these small 4-inch foam rollers. They're not like a regular paint roller where it's, sort of has something the size of like a paper towel tube of cardboard on the inside of it and then, a small foam piece on the outside. This is just sort of like a foam with a hole down the center, a little tiny cardboard tube only as big around as that handle of the roller itself. And I don't know if you can see it, but on the low side of the roller in this particular view, it's starting to really swell. It's catching a lot of paint on it, and they're starting to almost fall apart. It's not giving it a good even surface. Now, moving forward, I would certainly use a different type of roller, preferably one of those ones with that cardboard inner core and just a thin foam on the outside. It would stay much more rigid. On this particular side, it's not covering as well, and it's because this is that first side I faired with such a thick layer of fairing. It's pretty rough, so it's going to require me to come back in here and add this on a pretty thick way and then sand it smooth afterwards.
Here we go. There's 2 coats of gel coat on there. The first one I mixed probably with about 5 to 10% acetone to thin it before I added the MEKP to thicken it. So this just has 2 coats put on with a foam roller. It is not perfect. The outside, I would say, looks a lot better than the inside. So I'm going to go here. It's not buffed to a complete smoothness, but I should be able to sand this, and I'll learn a little bit more about it. And in some places on the inside, you can see where it's not great just because it wasn't completely smooth. But it is sealed, and again, that's the inside of the box, so I'm much less worried about that. When it's all completely done, we will do an update video. Alright, just came to take a look after putting some gel coat on it, and looks pretty good. This is nice and hard and solid. I'll say it's not the smoothest in the world. I certainly didn't fare it beautiful like the side of a hull. All right, let me just set the stage here. A few days have gone by. If you recall, what you've just seen in the video is we went ahead and we faired the entire outer surface, and then I used gel coat that has wax in it. And the purpose behind a wax additive to a gel coat or a polyester resin is to allow that resin to fully cure. It gets it hard as a rock by creating a film on the outside, allowing all the heat to stay inside and build up and cure it completely. As opposed to a laminating resin that doesn't have wax in it, but it's good for laying subsequent layers on top of each other. So when I checked on this about 36 hours or so after putting gel coat on it, it still felt a little bit tacky. When I touched it and picked up the box, I had a little bit of white on my hands from it. I was nervous. I wasn't sure if I had the mix right. So I knew I was going out of town this week. I just figured I'm not going to have much time to work on it. Let me just let it sit and cure a little longer and see how it looks. I'm not real familiar with exactly how long the top layer of gel coat or resin should take to cure when it has that wax on it, because really it's happening underneath that wax surface. It's continuing to cure. So the goal today is to open this up and see what we've got. What I'm hoping for is a good solid surface that will allow me to start to sand that a bit smooth, and then determine after the sanding whether I'm going to just apply a wax over the top of it and sort of be done with it, or if I'm going to have to put another coat of paint on the whole thing. What's going to determine that is really how smooth I can get this. A tip from Andy at Boatworks today is when you're fairing something, if you're going to use gel coat over the top of it, especially if it's going to be polyester resin anyway, it's a little easier to put your gel coat on, and the gel coat will help to fill in some of the lulls and the valleys, and it's fairly nice. It's a nice, easy way to then come back and sand later. You might leave gel coat down in those spots, and you might sand it off on the high spots, but at the end of the day, you end up with a nice, smooth finish. And if you're going to paint over it anyway, so be it. It's just easier to do than a fairing compound because it sands easier. So anyway, that's my goal. Let's get this thing open and see what we have. So far, so good. Let's get it outside in the light where we can really take a good look at it. All right, so this feels pretty good. I'm going to take my little spacers out of here that I put in place just to keep the paint from getting on the tarp. So I'm pleased with this. It feels good and solid. I've picked it up. I don't have any gel coat on my fingers, and where I was getting it the other day is when I was picking it up like this after just 36 hours, it was still a little bit tacky right underneath here. I think the reason why is when I did that that fairing coat, I took some of that thickened fairing and I stuck it in these corners just to make them a little bit rounded. And I believe that probably was still just a little tiny bit tacky before I put the gel coat on. So a mistake on my part, I should have done that for sure. You can see I've not done the bottom yet. And this is the laminating surface I mentioned before. Here, this is completely dry and hard feeling. Here, it still feels a little bit tacky. Not tacky as in wet, but tacky almost like a linoleum surface would be. You know, it's just got a little give to it. Perfect for laminating additional layers on here, but I'm going to give a light sand to this and see how it looks, and then when I get all done with this, I'll end up putting gel coat on the bottom of this too. I'm just more interested in how this is going to go, and because I still have to make my lid, I figure I can gel coat this when I'm also gel coating the lid. So let's going to give this thing a run. I'm pleased with this. You know, you might remember the purpose behind the shape here. It's an odd shape, as you can see. This is the part that's going to go toward the bow, and it's flat. And then this part here has this odd sort of shape, and that takes the shape of the coach house. The center of the boat is sort of pointed out forward in the coach house, so this kind of takes that shape. And the reason I designed it this way is when we're anchored in, the lid will kind of come down and close over it. So I think that's going to be a good one. So something that's a little bit new to me is really around how to go about sanding this. You know, I feel like because it's a finished sort of surface, I ought to be using like 320 or 420, but it definitely still has a few spots that I want to get down. Like I can see I got a drip here, so I got a spot with a little raised edge. So I'm actually going to use 220. That feels like it might be too much, but for what I'm doing, I'm okay with it. And like I said before, if what happens here is the gel coat ends up in the low spots and I get all the way back down to that fiberglass resin, I'll come back and put a whole new coat over the whole thing of paint. I'm not married to gel coat being my surface. I just wanted to get an opportunity to try it and use it, I can always use any kind of a all grip type external paint for this. Again, this is a deck box. It comes up, goes off the boat, so not something I'm worried about having permanent. What we got to do is sand it on the inside first, so that if it doesn't look good, I don't care so much because it's the inside. It's pretty amazing. I can feel the difference here quite a bit. You know, and you can see little spots where I went through the gel coat to the raised spots, but I think that's okay. I think that's kind of what we want. I'm going to put a different pad on here, and I'm going to do this very lightly. I'm barely letting the weight of the actual sander do this, just because I don't want to have this at an angle and potentially gouge into it too far. So you're going to see me barely applying pressure here. Feels good. I like it a lot. So I'm gonna have to construct my lid, and what I want my lid to do, let's kind of go this at an angle here. What I want my lid to do is it's going to hinge back here. It's going to have essentially a lip that goes out over the whole outside. Ideally, when it's sitting closed, it's going to sit on top of that with a lip that hangs down over the front. So it's going to be interesting once I build this. This is going to require a little bit more precision. This one, you know, I could lay it up thicker and it didn't matter. It is what it is. But now when I do the lid, I have to make sure that lid is enough space to go over this thing very well and line up the hinges. So I'll probably give myself a little bit of play in the front and then have a latch that folds over and locks right down in the middle. We're set. So this is how you build a fiberglass deck box. I'm not going to probably put the video here of me doing the actual finish painting at some point down the road. You'll see this thing sitting on deck and you'll kind of know what it looks like, but there we go. Started with 1/4-inch plywood, laminating chop strand mat and polyester resin. I did 2 and 3 coats depending on the section we were at. Filleted the edges so that these are all rounded as opposed to 90-degree bends. This has a small 1x2 frame on it to give it some rigidity. And then we went ahead and faired it with a polyester resin. Next time I do that, I'm going to thicken the polyester resin and add a little bit of wax so it fully cures in the fillets. I didn't do that this time. And then I covered it with a gel coat with wax in it. Sanded it smooth. That got it good and solid and hard. And the next coat that we'll put on this when it's all said and done will actually be the paint that we'll use. Probably an all grip kind of outdoor marine paint. That'll be a good solid surface for this. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, do me a favor, give it a thumbs up, like it, share it with your friends, and please do check out our channel, follow us on Facebook, and check out our website at svdreamchaser.com. Thanks, everybody.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching, and please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or even Tumblr. Please take a moment and go over to our website at svdreamchaser.com to download free resources for cruising and how-to projects. Get your thumbs and mouses ready. We also have a couple of links right on the screen for some other playlists and videos that we think you'll enjoy. Thanks for watching, fellow dreamers.